Hello everyone, this is Sheila Shaffie and welcome back to ProcessArc's channel. In today's video, I want to talk about data because there's no way to get away from it. Everywhere you turn, on any publication, social media outlet, you're hearing noise around data scientists, data analysts, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And I think it's important to start putting everything into context and figuring out where we are in our data maturity curve and what we need to do next. So there is the sense that we should all be busy compiling data and storing it somewhere. And I want to make the case that for some of us, for some organizations, that's not the right strategy. And it's okay to put the pause button on and not feel panicked by all the commotion that's around us, particularly in the space of machine learning and getting to a place where you're becoming more prescriptive with what you are offering to your customers. So let me step back for a second and talk about the maturity curve, where in one end of the spectrum, you are trying to use your data to have performance metrics in place. These are your table stakes. These are metrics that should be in place in every company, that you should be measuring daily, weekly, monthly, because they're important metrics gauging how you're performing today in absolute terms, but also in relation to your targets. So that's where some of us are. We're just trying to wrap our heads around what are some of the most important metrics that we should be measuring operationally, financially, and customer-wise. And these could be things like inventory, cost of inventory, inventory turns, cycle time, the time that it takes to complete a customer issue first the right time. So these are things that are within your business processes that indicate how well your business processes are performing, both again from a customer perspective and also a financial perspective. So that's one end of the spectrum. And then from a maturity perspective, the opposite end, which is the more complex side, is all about the prescriptive analytics. And that's where really companies need billions of data points around their customers, their customer behavior, macroeconomic conditions, microeconomic conditions, in order to figure out what their customers really need in the next stage of their life, which is really where the whole notion of customer advocacy and client experience comes in. But that's a really difficult goal to attain. It requires a tremendous amount of maturity, data maturity, and analytics maturity in order to get there. So if you're feeling panic that, oh my gosh, everybody seems to be talking about machine learning and using all this data, storing all this data, and having teams of data scientists and data analysts doing this kind of stuff, I just want you to know that that's just in the hands of a few corporations. The rest of us are kind of still hovering in the not so mature stage of data. And I'm sorry to put it that way. It's not meant to be offensive, but I'm just trying to create some sense of calm and structure around what we need to be doing next. So just know that there's a handful of companies, Amazon, Google, Facebook, that are tracking every single movement that we have and have entire teams dedicated to predicting what we're going to do next so that they can sell us the next great thing that we don't actually need, but we want. So that's that end of the spectrum. Now, for the rest of us, what we need to be doing first, before we start thinking about the data and where to store the data and how to clean the data and how to structure the data, is figuring out, first and foremost, what are we trying to measure? What are we trying to predict? What are the questions we're trying to find answers to? Is it that we're trying to figure out which loan product may fit our customer best based on the last decision they made, Or it could be that, hey, if I start offering P2P payment technology, will that increase the retention or the lifetime value of the customer? So having these types of questions, knowing what it is that you're trying to find an answer for, is incredibly important in trying to figure out what data you should be collecting, cleaning, and storing somewhere. And then you can worry about finding data scientists and data analysts to figure out actually how to use statistical models to make sense of that data. So I will put that kind of in the middle. But it should really begin with saying, how do I want to measure my business performance today? That's kind of like step number one. These are the things that you should, again, be measuring day in and day out to gauge the performance. Those metrics actually lead to the more sophisticated and complicated questions, your hypotheses around how customers behave. That's kind of the next stage, which then allows you to ask the more complicated question, and that's where you need statistical modeling. And then if you conquer those two, then you can start thinking about and worrying about prescriptive analytics, which is where machine learning is beginning to come in. So again, let's all take a deep breath. It's not the end of the world. We don't all have to be building data warehouses in the cloud and collecting every single data point that we've ever thought was important about a client somewhere. Let's first figure out what's important from a performance metrics perspective, then figure out what predictive analytics we need to do to gauge customer behavior, and then we can worry about machine learning. All right, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. It's just there seems to be a sense of panic with certain organizations, and I don't blame them. There's just so much noise out there around how we all need to be thinking about data, and the data is the new gold and the new oil and the new, I don't know, tulip bulb. That was the rush in Holland centuries ago. But let's just first make sure we have a strategy of trying to figure out what it is we want to measure first, and then worry about figuring out where the data is going to come from and how to store it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. I know there may be some controversy around what I just stated, so I would love to hear the pros and cons. I love dialogue, so make sure you leave your comment below. Please don't forget to subscribe. It makes me feel great when I know people are out there listening and subscribing to the content, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.